The second half of today starts out with our second keynote of today. Again, another bright mind in the field of technology and also in the field specifically of CRM. So for all you CRMers or CRM heads or whatever cool name we're going to use, I'm not quite sure which yet is the best nomenclature, but for all you CRM geeks, you know, that'll work. That'll work. Yeah, aficionados I heard as well. So I'd like to bring up a gentleman here that's expert on the subject, an author of a best-selling book called CRM at the Speed of Light. He's the managing principal of the 56 Group. They specifically kind of work on cutting-edge CRMs and social strategies. Big fan of Zoho and a big fan of CRM in general. Hopefully more of a Zoho fan than he is a Salesforce fan, but we'll beat it out of him if he's not. But without further ado, I'd love to turn it over to Paul Greenberg.
Just to be clear, I'm actually more of a Yankees fan than anything else. All right? Okay. I have friends already, I know that. All right, so I'm going to also, being originally from New York, I'm going to have to talk really fast today, and I can do that. And because this is really a 2-hour presentation that I'm condensing to 45 minutes, and I will also warn you that I'll go over. Pretty much guarantee. All right, so I'm going to start out by, I want to ask you all a few questions, and some of these are going to be pretty blatantly obvious, but so how many people here now, currently, this minute, use during a week any kind of social network or participate in any kind of community whatsoever? Everybody. Okay. How many people here did that 5 years ago? Smaller amount. How many people here did that 8 years ago? Few early adopters. I want you to hold that. All right, one more question. How many people here, before this speech is done, are going to do this? Raise your hand. Nothing. It's protocol's fine, okay? Etiquette says you can do that. I won't be insulted, I promise. Right? All right. That's exactly the point. See, what I want you to know, by doing that, by showing that, and by participating, you're all social customers. This is part and parcel of how we live, okay? Not just what we do in business. And we have to keep that in mind. If you actually think that over the last 8 years we've undergone a business revolution, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. That's what we've undergone. We've undergone a communications revolution that's changed not just business, it's changed every single institution that we interact with. It's changed how we interact with each other. It's changed the tempo and pace and the media that we can interact with each other. It's changed what we expect from each other differently. It's changed how we trust differently. All of this has occurred, and it's because it's a communications revolution. Business is just simply one of the institutions, one of the types of institutions that's been affected. Now, we're going to focus on business, obviously. So what I want to do now is just sort of give you a broad understanding of how powerful this really is. All right, here's Jeffrey Moore. I think a lot of people know him from Crossing the Chasm. Well, he wrote a document which is freely available called an enterprise, it's something like an enterprise look at systems of engagement. And it's actually worth reading. But in there he said the following. What is transpiring is momentous, nothing less than a planet wiring itself a new nervous system. If your organization is not linked into this nervous system, you'll be hard-pressed to participate in the planet's future. This is sort of a strange way of putting it, but amidst the texting and the twittering and the Facebooking of a generation of digital natives, the fundamentals of next-generation communication and collaboration are being worked out. Now, the key phrase here, being worked out, right? We don't have a perfect order of things. We don't have everything in place we need. But what we are seeing is a maturing capability that actually now has a body of practice, it has a body of principles, it has a framework within which we can operate, it has capabilities which are now available to us that allow us to take advantage of these new ways of communicating, these new channels, and incorporate them into the traditional stuff we're already doing. And what we're going to talk about today is pretty much that. First thing to understand, though, and the first when it comes to business, is right now we all live over here, a customer ecosystem. Right now, the customer actually controls the business ecosystem, not the businesses. And in fact, the customers at this point are actually able to impact your business in ways that you don't even know till the impact hits, and are communicating that are communicating in the channels that you don't control. And the first step, as we'll see later, that you have to actually accept is to actually say, okay, I believe that, right? And that's how your culture of your business, small or large, doesn't matter. You can be a one-person business like me, or you could be a 400,000 employee business that Jacob mentioned and Gene Marks mentioned this morning, like IBM. So understand, this is you. And these are the kind of things you're communicating on. And these are the places you're communicating in. And that's only a little of it. This is the communication prism by, the conversation prism by Brian Solis. Take a look at this. Each of those little flower petals represents not a channel, but a channel category. Meaning that is one type of thing that people are communicating in. Each of those logos is a channel within that category, and they're only representative examples. Right? So you're talking here, just on this chart alone, hundreds of channels that your customers are communicating in some way. Not necessarily about you, but possibly about you. Now, I get a question a lot, which is, how do we deal with that? And you know, the pat answer is social media monitoring tools, but the real answer is you deal with it by actually doing right by your customers regardless, so that whatever is going on there is positive, not negative. Right? These are cultural issues we're talking about, which are paramount when it comes to using any of this stuff. And we can't underestimate what that means. But we also have to recognize how the change works. All right, 2009, two studies came out. One from Morgan Stanley and one from Nielsen. The study said for the first time in history, more people are communicating via social networks than via email. Now that's amazing, right? Reality is, I bet you I can find you 20 studies that say the exact opposite. You can find statistics for anything you want, right? And you can prove anything you want. And all the numbers that I'm going to show you today as we go through this, I'll find the opposite somewhere else if I really want to. But you know what's important about that? Remember we were talking about 8 years ago and none of you were participating in social networks? Those studies would never have even shown anywhere, even if it's 2 out of a million. There would have been 0 out of a million then. The very fact is we're seeing a dramatic change, and that dramatic change is reflected by that particular sampling just by the fact it exists, not by the numbers it gives you. And that's a very important thing to recognize, because social networks are not going away, right? Communication from one to many and many to many, not going away. It's never going away. You know, I hear this a lot because you hear, okay, well, you know, then social channels will replace traditional channels, right? Well, you know, you think about that first. You realize, okay, so what was the first traditional channel? Word of mouth. And as far as I know, that hasn't exactly gone away yet, right? It's going to be here forever. And the only thing that only time a channel will disappear is technological obsolescence, and that's it. Other than that, all those channels will still be part and parcel of how you have to deal with customers in your business, but social channels are now a significant piece of that and have to be included in the discussion. If you don't include them, to put it in very blunt New Yorkese, you're being stupid, okay? And that is the reality of it. Even if you're, again, one person business. So who is this social customer we're talking about besides, you know, obviously you? Well, the one I'm going to focus on, the aspect of it, you can read all that. The one I want to focus on is the issue of trust, because that, in fact, is reality for all of us, because it involves what our customers think of us, how much they are willing to do business with us, and what is the long-term prospects for us when they're doing business. All right, there's a study that comes out every year. It's come out every year for the last dozen, called the Abelman Trust Barometer. And it's the trusted source of who are your trusted sources. And what that means is this. They take a look at the kind of individuals that you trust as when you're thinking about the most trusted source for you. So for example, in 2003, the most trusted sources were industry analysts and financial experts, and you see where that got us, right? So, but that was the most trusted source. Those are the people that we trusted more than anyone else. Now, in 2003, they also introduced a category called people like me. And now, people like me means very simply people who you feel are similar to you, not people you know. We're not talking about your relatives, we're not talking about blood, we're not talking about your best friends. We're talking about what's called in psychology weak ties. But you know, the idea is people who you feel are like you. I'll give you an example. How many people here use either restaurant or consumer electronics equipment reviews or things like that before they go and buy something? Go online, of course. It's like I always know the answer, obviously, but makes the point. So here's what happens if you think about it. So let's say you go on to Yelp and you want to do a restaurant review and you're looking for, I don't know, great barbecue. All right? You know, just saying that makes my stomach upset. Right? You're looking for great barbecue. So you go online and you see 5-star restaurants, 4, 3, 2, 1-star restaurants, and you're reading all this stuff. And you say, okay, 5-star looks good, 1-star looks bad, but then you're reading down and it said in the 1-star restaurant, it says best barbecue in the state, service just sucks, I can't stand service, but barbecue's really good. 5-star restaurant says everything's amazing except the barbecue. Right? But what you're interested in is the barbecue. So you're going to consider possibly that 1-star restaurant, but that 1-star restaurant is 1 star, and there's other things that are going in your head. What's really going on, though, if you think about this, is you're weighing this according to your individual preferences that in a very specific way that indicates very strong internal knowledge of what you really want. And what also it says is you're trusting something or someone you don't know a damn thing about. All you know is that this person's email handle is like rabbiddog@gmail.com. And you're trusting that person automatically. Why? Because they're someone like you. They're a person like you. And that's actually what's really important to understand. This is how this trust shifts. Now, remember I was talking about the Abelman Trust Barometer, right? Well, we go back and we take a look at 2003. Remember I said person like me became a category. And at that time, 23% of the people like me, 23% chose a person like me as their most trusted source. In 2004, that went to 51%. In 2005, 6, 7, 8, and 9, it kept going up. In 2010 and 11, it dropped. And the reason it dropped was that people had seen so much hype on social networks, they were starting to mistrust the source. But here's the interesting thing. This year, in this study that came out in January 2012, it went back up to 65%, which is the highest ever. And the reason for that is that people are now able to sort out what's the crap and what's the real people that they're interacting with and who they can trust. And they're beginning to actually do that. And that indicates a maturity that we're just beginning to see, and we'll start seeing what that actually means. The other thing that was interesting about this study was what they said was, well, what is it that companies expect in order to trust people expect in order to trust a company? Now look at these things. Listen to customer needs and feedback. Okay? Engage the customer, in other words. High quality goods and services offered. Now, is that some benefit of the social age that that's what we want? No, of course not. That's been what we always wanted out of a company. It's high quality products and services, and we'll see what that means in a minute. Treats employees well, which is a little surprising that that actually was something. And this one, customers are placed ahead of profit. And we're going to see what that, well, we'll see what that actually means in just a minute, or what companies have. Now, here's the problem. All right, so IBM, this, by the way, is probably the single most used slide in more presentations than any other one I've ever seen. This is from the IBM Institute for Business Value. They did a 2-part study from social media to social CRM. I highly advise you get that study. It's free. Google it. You'll find it. I can't give the exact URL, but it's free in the 2 parts. Make sure you download both. So on the right side, this is the reason that businesses think consumers are following them on social sites. On the left side, it's the reasons that consumers are following them on social sites. Look at the top one on the left. Consumers are following companies on social sites because they're interested in purchases and discounts. That's the highest, most important ones. Businesses' reasons for why they think the least important ones are purchases and discount. You literally can't get a worse disconnect. It literally can't be. I mean, there's no room down here, right? It's just astonishing if you think about how bad that disconnect really is. Now, keep in mind, IBM studies go to, in this case, let's see, 1,066 executives. This is not a minor league study. These guys do good work, and it's no IBM agenda associated with it. So you can pretty well count on this stuff as being relatively accurate. So then the question becomes, all right, what do you do? Well, luckily, we're finding, another study they did in 2010, we're finding that businesses actually are getting somewhat concerned about this. And this one was fascinating. This is a CEO study. Now look at this. They did a study of CEOs, and they found that the most important initiative that CEOs feel they have on their agenda for the next 5 years, this isn't a year-long thing, for the next 5 years is getting closer to their customers and figuring out what that means, which is, in light of this, a good idea, right? So, you know, what you have now is a situation where there's an openness at the corporate level, in the small business world, in mid-sized market, everywhere, to figuring out how you do this when your customer has more access to more channels than they've ever had before any time in their existence or any time in customers' existence. How do you actually do all this? And that's where customer engagement comes in. And we're going to go into what that means and what that doesn't mean. First of all, first thing to understand, it does not mean getting married to your customer. Okay, look, when push comes to shove, customer intimacy isn't what drives engagement. What drives engagement is a customer's desire and willingness to proactively involve themselves with you, and your willingness to provide them with the products, the services, the tools, and the consumable experiences, and we'll get into what that means in a bit, that they need to stay involved with you. They want to control the experience with you. And look, the problem you have as a company is that you can't at all know what that customer does all day, goes through all day, feels all day, and thinks all day. You have no way of knowing that. All you can know is what, in fact, their involvement with you is. But there's a huge impact on them every day when it comes to their emotional state when they're talking to you. Now, I'll give you an example. That's the enterprise value chain. It's vendors and suppliers, it's external agencies, it's partner and channels if you're large enough, and it's company and customers, or if you're small, it could be vendors and suppliers because you have them, company, and your customers, and that's it. But here's the customer's personal value chain. It's their family, it's their friends, it's everything else going on in their life, and it's other customers. Now, what does that mean in terms of impact? All right, imagine this scenario. You're Amazon, you're a customer, and you've had a normal day, and you want to order something on Amazon. So you go on to Amazon, and you click to buy, and there's 12 seconds of latency. But it's an ordinary day. So you wait, goes through the end. Okay, scenario 2. Not an ordinary day. You've had a huge, huge fight with your significant other, and you're basically gritting your teeth and breaking them at this point. You're so mad. And you get onto Amazon, and you order something, and there's 12 seconds of latency again. Now, 12 seconds at that point is 12 days of latency as far as you're concerned, right? And what do? You abandon the shopping cart immediately because you're saying, I won't curse in polite company, but you know what you're thinking, right? So what you do is, well, what Amazon knows is what? You abandon the shopping cart. Do they know the reason? No. But here's the interesting question. Do they need to? No, they don't. But you know what they need to do? They need to fix the latency. That's what they need to do. Then they won't have that problem. Ultimately, the key to all of this is that the company is committed to providing an experience that the customer can respond to or proactively shape. If you do that, you engage the customer. The engagement level doesn't actually matter totally, meaning it could be a casual engagement, it could be intense, it could be daily, it could be yearly, it could be an ordinary transaction, it could be an extraordinary transaction, or it could be an involvement that gets you to stay on the site for 2 hours, or an involvement that keeps you on the site for 3 minutes. All of those are forms of engagement. The key is that it's ongoing, right? And that the customer is determining how much engagement how much they care to be engaged at any given time, and that you're providing them with what they need to know that. And we'll see how that actually impacts things. So again, casual to intense, infrequent to frequent, changing moment to moment, but that proactive involvement is the actual engagement that the customer has. And if you can get them there, you've got a customer that's going to love you for what you do, or they'll continue to buy from you. Maybe that's it. Good enough to start, right? You don't have to delight them every single time you deal with them. What you have to do is make sure you meet their expectations minimally. And their expectations are you provide them with what they need. Let me give you an example when that fails. So back in 2006, Disney destinations noticed this big drop in revenue. And they did, they're very good at researching what the problems are. And they found out that one of the biggest problems they were having was that people were getting sick and tired of taking these very complicated vacations and dealing with travel agents for hours on end to try to solve them, right? And you literally, it's not like you're not even, how would I put it, not even planning a vacation with them, you're solving it, right? So you come out of this negotiation with a travel agent who's throwing packages in your face constantly, and you feel so exhausted, you go to somewhere else to find a second vacation. So what you had was a drop in revenues because people felt like there was no control over their own vacation. So Disney said, well, creatively, because this was 2006, we'll create some online tools. And we'll let people go in, and they can build their own vacation. They can save it in progress. They can leave it when they want to. They can come back to it when they want to. And relevant packages will be presented to them, meaning if there's a price change, we'll notify them. If there are packages, given the patterns that we're seeing here, that seem appropriate, we'll present them with that. And they can pick and choose them as they want. And again, save it in progress, end it when you want. So what happened? Disney found revenue spiked back up, right? They did their research. They found out to a large extent, one of the reasons that customers were liking them again was because they had control over their own experience with the company. And the key word is control, right? We all want that, all of us. You don't want to be control freaks. You just simply want to have control over your own life and how it works and where it's going. You'd like to be able to at least direct it. And you'd like to have what you need to have a relationship that you own, right? That you own. That could be a partnership. You own it as well as your partner owns their facet of it. But that kind of relationship is critical to understanding this. And what you want is not a person like me, but you want a customer to be thinking, this is a company like me. Because they feel some form of identity to you because you're providing them with the experience and the capabilities that they need to have the experience that they can actually control. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about engagement. But understand something. When it comes to these social channels, when it comes to Twitter, when it comes to Facebook, when it comes to building your own internal communities, whatever it comes to, they're just some of the channels you're dealing with. Look, I can also probably point out an overwhelming number of studies that say even Gen Y's preferred customer service channel is the phone. Regardless of how you cut this, it's still the phone. And people still, as much as we all joke about smartphones and nobody makes calls, everyone makes calls on a smartphone. So the reality is it still operates like a phone. Now, the one thing, though, that's really important to understand is we now have a body of practice, a body of principle, and a framework that takes us past the experimental stage for the most part when it comes to social channels. There's enough work out there of success and failure to figure out how to use these things. A study done by eConsultancy last year said, look, 64% of all the companies that responded to their survey said we're beyond the experimental stage when it comes to social. We're now at the point now where this is integrated into our thinking, into our actions, into our approaches. It's just simply integrated. It's 2/3, have said that. Now, these are not large companies. These are, for the most part, medium and small. So you're getting past where we're seeing a maturation now, where there's no real excuse any longer to say we're just testing things. But the key thing to understand is customers will self-select. You know, one of the things we always want to talk about is knowing our customers, gaining insight into our customers so that we can know them better and better and better. Well, the reality is customers give us that insight every day as long as we're using CRM, in this case, to capture all that data that's out there from that. Look, CRM systems are systems of record. We talked about that this morning. There's a database part to that. There's also systems of engagement, which are actually how customers can interact with you, but you don't substitute one for the other. Systems of engagement provide you with interaction information. You capture that and bring it into the system of record still. Even with all these new systems and capabilities, and we'll look at an example of that in just a minute, the reality is, as the customer is being self-selective, you're capturing all that and you're gaining more insight into that customer every day. If you're using it properly, as Gene said, if you're a winning company. Now, I'm not going to get into product co-creation. That's the most advanced stuff, and if anyone would like to, we can certainly talk about it after the presentation. So what are we trying to do here? When push comes to shove, we're trying to do what we've always done with CRM, but utilizing a wider range of channels, which is we're providing the customer with the kind of experience that they need in order to have the kind of relationship that we want. And a lot of companies are thinking about that and are doing it. And you can take a look at the top number. 60% of companies have a senior exec in charge of customer experience. But you remember what I said about the customers? One of the four things that they want to trust a company? Put the customer before company profit. Look at the bottom one there. 17% of the respondents of the study done by Bruce Temkin, is the top customer experience consultant in the world, feel execs are willing to trade off short-term financial results for long-term loyalty. Meaning, it's great in theory what the customers want, but that's not what companies are doing. And that's a problem. And we have to get past that problem. And we're getting to but that's where I'm saying we're still in the process of that rewiring that Jeffrey Moore's talking about. It's not done yet. But we are more mature than we have been. Now, what I'm going to describe is one of those systems of engagement and an approach so you can begin to see how this stuff can work. And it's stuff you guys can do no matter how big or small your business really is. It's called gamification. And we're talking about something that's becoming a rather large business. It's not just game playing. It's more than that. Its actual purpose is altering customer behavior to a more positive relationship with you. That's its purpose. And not just customer behavior, by the way, employee behavior. So here's some numbers to look at. Look at the last one there. By 2016, we're talking about a $2.8 billion market. The reality of that, what's interesting is just that it's going to be big. Okay, that's all, take it as metaphor, since the reality is who can predict anything like that, really? But just realize we're talking about something that right now most companies are already getting involved in. So what is gamification? Well, essentially it's anything that you do that has a goal, that has rules, that has a feedback system, and voluntary participation. And we'll look at what that means. But what it evokes is really important too. It's not just what it does, but it's what it evokes. There are two kinds of emotion that you can begin to see when it comes to this, and there will be emotions that you all recognize individually. I guarantee this. If you don't, you're a cyborg, right? So one of them is emotion we all know, which is in the zone. Everybody's been in the zone at some point in their life, and you know what that is. It's kind of an immersive feeling that you're involved in this thing, and it could be a social thing or it could be an individual thing, but you're going, you lose sense of time, but you're focused on it, and you're really focused on it very intensely. Okay, that's part of the emotion that gamification actually deliberately evokes. The other side is what's called fiero, and that's that sense of victory. And what's interesting is the guru of gamification is this woman named Jane McGonigal, and she wrote a book called Reality is Broken. It's a really good book, by the way. And she says that there's this sense of victory, which she said is primal. It's actually primal. It's an emotion that all humans pretty much respond the exact same way to it. She said, you know, with occasional exceptions. I'm sure when you have 7 billion people, somebody's going to be different. So, but the emotion is called fiero, and what that is that sense of victory. And here's the way people respond. when it happens. It's yes, or variation 2, yes. That's it. But that's pretty much it. And who hasn't done that here? Who has never done that when they just thought they just won something really cool? Right, there's a third one. That's right. Third one. I saw it. That one. We'll put on a slide with all the variations. But that feeling is actually part of this as a conscious methodological approach, is the evocation of that feeling. And it can be very simple. It doesn't have to be a complicated thing like World of Warcraft, which is highly complex and has all kinds of social, psychological implications. It can be something as simple as this. And I actually saw this. You're on an e-commerce site. This is actually, I won't say who, but a large vendor actually has showed me this on their e-commerce work, So you're on an e-commerce site. And in the background, your web behavior is being monitored. And they're checking out what and you're hovering over this one page of something that you might want to buy constantly. You're back there, you're off it, you're back there again, you're off it again, you're hovering on it for 2-3 minutes. All of a sudden, something pops up, a screen that says, you know what? If you buy this in the next 5 minutes, we'll give you 20% off. Right? Boom. And guess what? Odds are pretty good you're going to change that behavior, be over the uncertainty, and buy it. And because it's already determined. Now, I want you to think about it. It's got a goal. Buy this in 5 minutes. You win this 20% off. It's got rules. You have to buy this in 5 minutes. Right? It gets you feedback. When you buy it, the 20% off's there, and you voluntarily bought it. It meets all the rules of gamification imaginable. So I want you to think about that for a second, because from that standpoint, it's as simple as that. What you're trying to do, and this is how you engage customers. It could be a contest you run online. It could be something you do in person in a store. It doesn't matter. All of this is gamification, but what it does is it increases the loyalty and commitment of the customer. Why? Because they actually like the experience with you. It's that simple. You know, one thing about CRM, which has always been its simplest notion, these can be big, complex systems. They can be small, simple systems. But the one simple truth about CRM is this. If a customer likes you and continues to like you, they will continue to buy from you. If they don't, they won't. And it's pretty much that, right? And when you get to the enterprise level, people are spending tens of millions of dollars to basically get a 1% advantage on that one. And that's about what they get. But that 1% means, in their case, hundreds of millions of dollars for their business. So that 1% is what CRM tends to provide. But that's an important percent in any business. Because reality says, if you've got more customers becoming more interested in dealing with you on a deeper level, they're going to go talk about it to people. Right? They're going to start talking to their friends. And now that they have those social channels, they can talk by the hundreds, by the thousands, by the millions possibly. If they're influential enough, they actually affect buying decisions. There's a metric that's been used in CRM for many years called customer lifetime value. And the basic idea is pretty simple. You sit down, you figure out how much the customer and their household are going to be worth to you over a time that you feel will be their lifetime with you as a customer. Well, there's a doctor, a PhD, named V. Kumar out of Georgia State University. And he says, we've got a different kind of world now. We've got to look at other metrics that are associated with customer lifetime value. And he has one called customer referral value. But it's an extension of CLV. You still have to measure the transactional value of direct relationship financially. So what CRV is, it says this. All right. We're going to look at indirect financial impact. And what that means is we're going to study people, and we're going to see who they talk to, and we're going to see what happens with them. So he says there are 4 questions. So let me ask you guys a question. How many people here are familiar with Net Promoter Score? A good chunk. All right. Okay, so as people who are familiar with it know, they know it's called the ultimate question. You ask one question. Would you recommend this company to someone you know? That's the question. That's Net Promoter Score. And a yes means, depending on the level of your yes, means you're a promoter. And a negative below 5 means you're a detractor. All right. And then they come up with a net score. Well, Kumar says that's not enough. And he has 2. That's question 1. Anyone want to guess what question 2 is? Nope, but you're in the ballpark, but not quite. Nope, not yet. You know what question 2 is? So question 1 is, would you recommend this company to someone you know? Question 2, and from when I heard this, it was kind of a combination of epiphany and duh, how could I not have figured this one out? Did you recommend this company to someone you know? That's what I mean. I mean, it's the obvious, really, but you don't think of it, right? The reality is, question 1's intent. Question 2 is action, right? And question 2, he did a 15,000 person study. Question 2 was combining the two studies. There were two facets, 6,000, 9,000 samplings. Question 2 was answered yes by 34%. So 1/3 actually recommend. Now, interesting enough, question 3 was, did they become a customer? Question 4 was, have they been or are they or a profitable customer? Those are the 4 questions that determine customer referral value. Now, think of the implications. The implications are, you have someone who's not buying much from you, but someone who's talking about you all the time, who's getting other people to buy from you. But if you just looked at their customer lifetime value, low value. If you looked at the customer referral value and the customer lifetime value, high value. So how you treat them might make a giant difference based on that simple, well, not simple, but that metric, that number. So we're talking about that as a financial measure for how engagement works, how customers get involved with you, how they talk to your other customers. And you can provoke that. You can, and we're going to see how a small business did it. Now, this is actual gamification done by SAP. But take a look at this. You know what this is gamifying? Accounts payable. Accounts payable. And they saw I think the number was a 28% uptick in productivity based on that, because it becomes a sport. It becomes a game. The prize, contributions to a charity based on the winning team of people who basically are entering data timely and correctly. That's what they're doing. But they gamify it. There's leaderboards. There's daily challenges. They built this. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be some big World of Warcraft thing. It simply has to be getting people involved in actually their day-to-day stuff in a way that they actually enjoy. That's what it amounts to. And actually has measurable results. But here's when it can be used really badly. All right, so I signed up to GetGlue a while back. It's a site where it basically says, hey, Paul Greenberg's watching, NCIS or something like that. And I signed up right away. And the first thing that happened was I checked into something called There's One in Every Crowd, and it unlocked a Radiohead sticker. I hate Radiohead. I cannot stand Radiohead. Now, I wasn't really expecting him to know a lot about me by that time. It was early on. But the minute I saw that, I've never been back to GetGlue. I just can't. Radiohead sucks as far as I'm concerned. So what happens is, of course, now that's an extreme example, but if you don't know much about your customer, it doesn't matter what you're gamifying or what you're doing, you're going to get results like this. The customer won't come back because they think, come on, man, they're morons. They don't know a damn thing about me, and they're not doing anything that will help me in any way. And this is the kind of thing. Again, this is a little extreme, but that's an example. So what does a company have to do when it comes to engagement? First thing is this. Whatever channel you're in, the experience has to be seamless. Okay? Whatever channel you're in. And if you remember, Gene talked about that this morning. The other thing to understand is you can't provide the customer with everything they always want. Let me give you an example. 90% of all queries that go to customer service are queries, meaning they're not complaints. 90%. The only thing you have to do is answer the query. That's it. You don't have to provide them with discounts. You don't have to delight them. You know what they want to do? They want to get an answer. That means they go online, they say, where's your address? They want to be able to find it, right? Imagine if you don't find it and you're a customer. You go ballistic. You hate the company for not making your day a waste because all you're trying to do is get something simple done, right? The idea here, and this is where business processes work, and this is where engagement, you don't have to worry about, from the engagement standpoint, you don't have to delight the customer. The idea here is very simple. You keep the ordinary, ordinary, right? That's all. 90%. The other 10% you have to deal with differently. The idea of that, too, is you don't have to, the other side of engagement is you don't have to use every single channel that exists. You use the ones that are appropriate to your customer base, period. Okay, and that means you have to talk to them to find that out. And that literally means that. So I don't know how many the largest or smallest of you have as customers. Find 5 or 10 of them Ask them what they do if you don't know. Not just how do they communicate with you, how do they communicate, period. Right? Find out, look, if you were a customer of mine and I just simply said, how do you communicate with me? I am pretty much going to know that. But I just found out, for example, all of you communicate on some social channel during the week. Most of it's not going to be with me. It's going to be with someone else or your friends or whoever. I need to find it out. And then I need to decide which ones are my priorities. And then I need to decide how well I'm going to deal with the protocols of each of those channels. Right? Because they're different. If I came in on your Facebook page and started pitching you, you'd shoot me, virtually, of course. Right? You'd shoot me because you'd be so upset that I was interfering with something that you really don't want me to interfere with. So you have to prioritize every channel that you deal with and decide whether it's useful. If you're 90 years old, your customer base is geriatric, the odds are pretty good they're not going to be on Twitter. They might be on Facebook, but odds are pretty good they're not going to be on Twitter, right? And chances are, if you invest a lot of money in building a Twitter service channel, you'll get no response, you'll see no action, no activity, no brand discussions, nothing. So you have to prioritize, and that's really important, because a lot of people now, one of the big mistakes is people think because it's Twitter, because it's Facebook, you must use it. You don't have to use it. You use what's appropriate. All right. So, I mean, I just told you a good chunk of this. The other thing to recognize is this, that what you think is value and what the customers think of value are two different things. Your value is revenue increases year over year. Profitability could be customer satisfaction of some sort. Depends, whatever you're determining. But they tend to be quantifiable. Customers are emotionally valuing things, even discounts and purchases. I'll give you an example. Okay, so I'm sending you a email in January, and it says, because you're such a valuable customer, I want to give you a 20% discount on any item in this company that you want this month. I do it in February, March, April, May, and June. 20%, you're a valued customer. July, you don't get it, but you're great, right? You feel, wow, what a great company. They really value me. 20% off. I'm getting something for it. All right? That's one. Now, it's January again. I send you an email, and it says, because you're such a pain in the butt, we want you to stay off our back, so we'll give you 30% off if you just leave us alone. Right? Now, that's 10% more than you were getting as a valued customer, if you think about this, right? Now, you get this in January, February, March, April, May, and June. Now, if you're into S&M, you probably will stick with that, right? Even if you do manage to get through that, are you going to be their customer in July? The minute that thing stops, if you've even managed to get that far, you're done. Again, these things are emotional. It's how valued the customer feels, and I will use that word a million times. It's not just the quantifiable return or the quantifiable benefit you're giving to the customer. All right, so now let's take a look at social CRM, and it's not social business, and it's not social enterprise, and it's not E2O, okay? I'm just going to say that. You can have the thing. All right, so I've been pretty well known as the guy who developed the definition for social CRM, and the thing that stuck was this particular statement. This has had 3 permutations, all right? The original one is the company's ownership of the I've got 5 minutes left, so that gives me 10, okay? I'll be done in 10. The company's programmatic response to the customer's control of the conversation is the recent one. The original one is the company's response to the customer's ownership of the conversation, and the third one, or the second one, was the company's response to the customer's control of the conversation. If you Google them strictly, in quotes, you will see 37,000 references to that. All right? That's the theoretical definition. Now, I can pat myself on my little bald head here, but the reality is I did a survey, forget scientific methodology, there really wasn't any, but I did a survey of 300 conversations from practitioners on CRM. Now, note I didn't say social CRM, I said CRM. And I put it together and aggregated it, and what I defined it as had nothing to do with what they're defining it as. This is what it is. Integration of traditional operational customer-facing activities, including strategies, programs, systems, and technologies combined with emergent social channels, to provide businesses with the means to communicate and engage with customers in their preferred channel for mutual benefit. Long-winded, but that is pretty much the aggregate definition, which if you think about it, simply says it's an extension of traditional CRM. Right, now the interesting thing is, and this is the most interesting thing, when you talk to the Gen Y practitioners, the thing you find is that their definition of CRM is that, not social CRM, CRM. They don't even think about what we used to think CRM was anymore. That's gone. This is CRM now, and it's not going back to what it used to be. All right, so these are the 5 simple rules, and the only one I'm going to talk about right now before I go into the case study to end this will be number 2, self-interest. First principle of all social CRM, whatever you like to call it, is we're all self-interested. Meaning that if you do not act on the self-interest that the individual that you're talking to has, they will not respond to you. And I will tell you what I mean. I was talking to the CEO of a Fortune 1000 company about a month ago. And I asked him a very straight question. I said, if you're down to a software selection of 2 software vendors, one is says it's 100% valuable to your company, no value to you. The other is 80% value to your company, but it's valuable to you. Which one would you choose? And he said, without any hesitation whatsoever, the second one. Without any hesitation. I mean, when I say none, I mean there wasn't even a second in between. So understand this, that what we're dealing with is always that we all have hopes and dreams, and we have lives we want to lead, and we have ideas that we want to present to the world, and we have things that are different. If I was talking to your identical twin, it would be different than your identical twin would have different hopes and dreams that they have from you. If you don't satisfy self-interest, and people don't understand that you're satisfying that self-interest in a sale or in anything, you fail. You're not going to get anywhere. So what I'm going to do now is take you to a case study of a small business that actually has done this from day one. And I'm taking you to the end point of it. The larger case study is available. If you like it, I'll be happy to give it to you. I'm happy to give you, there's a larger presentation. This one is pared down. You can have the larger presentation if you'd like. It's a company called GiftGaff. GiftGaff is a virtual mobile network operator that sells SIM cards that call services and data services. It was created by O2, by the director of innovation there. Now, they treated it as a startup. They didn't fund it big. They gave it, I think, 40,000 pounds or something like that. So O2 had to figure out, or GiftGaff had to figure out how to build a community. Well, they built the community from the ground up so successfully, got the community to actually set the pricing, to set the strategies, to set the programs, to set the services. And not only that, they got the community to do this. If you can see this, right over there, it says 679,171. What that is where the community solves the customer service problems of the company. You know how much they have, how many people they have in their contact center? None, right? The community is solving 95% of the problems, or well, I'm sorry, 50% of the problems, and then they have a group called super users who get paid by services who are on the phone 18 hours a day to help solve problems. Now, the interesting thing is that because the community does this, they get responses like this. The immediate response, 3 minutes. The question's answered in 3 minutes. The actual answer, as opposed to the response. The answer within an hour, 95% of them. Right? Well, here's the result. Remember we were talking about NPS? GiftGaff has one of the highest NPS ratings in the world. It's 72, where Apple and Google is 79 and 74. Verizon, 10. Right? Of course, we all expect that. Right? But GiftGaff is one of the most successful companies in the world. It's won award after award after award, and it was built from the ground up. It's a small business, but it understood one thing. Customers are your partners. You engage your partners in the activity of the company from the ground up, you actually can build it. And if you exist now already, and you're not a new company, you start engaging them now. And you bring them in, you start building the systems you need, you start building the strategies, you start building the programs, and then you get the kind of level of engagement that this communications revolution has called for. So with that, because of time, here's all the things I already told you, and we'll close out, and here's all the information you need if you'd like to stay in touch, and I'm around for the rest of the day. Thank you.